Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to yet another episode in which I talk about issues related to public transport. Today we're going to talk about mostly intercity, maybe some regional, but mostly intercity, about the topic of family tickets and group tickets. So, this is mostly an issue for the competitiveness of intercity rail, intercity scheduled transport in general, versus cars. Why? Because the cost of car travel doesn't matter how many, that doesn't change based on how many people there are inside of it. And not for nothing, I think it's in Chester, Horvat. Yeah. So there's this paper which has certain problems, and by certain problems I mean they literally overestimated in the first draft. Sorry, not the first draft, the first published version of the paper overestimated high-speed rail life cycle emissions because they multiplied instead of divided by a certain factor when going between metric and English units. And when it was pointed out by Clem Tillier, they did actually fix. But anyway, I bring this up because that's my citation on something, and the something is average occupancy of cars in intercity travel. So they were comparing high-speed rail with air and car travel, and they were making different assumptions on on how full the trains were going to be. Obviously, trains, like all other modes of transport, are greener when more people are in them. But they didn't have any baseline number for trains in the case they were doing, which is California High-Speed Rail, because there's no California High-Speed Rail. I don't mean the project is dead or something. I mean the project has not yet opened. California High-Speed Rail, we can debate what's going to happen in the future, but the fact that it does not exist in the present, let alone in the present when the paper was written, which was late 2000s and published in 2010, that's indisputable. So they were making various assumptions, but for cars, and I think also for planes, they had actual figures. And for cars, they said that there are 2 passengers in a car on average in intercity trips. I don't remember if it is intercity in America, intercity in California. I doubt it's intercity globally. Just knowing how transportation statistics are collected, I mean, I don't live in the United States, and it's easier for me to find these figures for the United States than globally. So that's going to be, so that's probably an American number. So 2 people on average in a car going intercity, and the going intercity is significant because in the United States, the average number of passengers in a car is about 1.5. You do passenger in America would be miles. Passenger miles divided by vehicle miles, it's about 1.5 or 1.6. The numbers are much higher in this case too for intercity travel, and much lower, I think they average about 1.2 for commuting travel. And I'm going to go with these numbers to point something out, and that something is that when you do family travel, so when you do any kind of group travel, cars are much more competitive than scheduled transport. If you're trying to buy, let's say you're a family of 4 and you're trying to, in the United States, you're probably not thinking about trains, you're thinking about cars versus planes, unless maybe it's a Northeast Corridor trip, or, I don't know, New York to upstate New York, and even then, I doubt people are taking Amtrak in significant enough numbers in New York to Rochester or Buffalo, and I say this as someone who did do that trip on Amtrak. It's mostly a car versus plane decision. The plane charges you more for more people. That's not going to change. I'm aware of one case in which you have significant family discounts on planes, and that is the case that I think is the least important. Namely, Air New Zealand, I don't know if they still have it, I know they used to, maybe they still do. They had this thing where a row of a row of three seats. No, I'm saying in the United States, nobody thinks about trains for trips in general outside the Northeast Corridor and a handful of off and AC travel things like New York to Albany business trips. Maybe I believe there's not high but significant model split. I don't know what's going on with Harrisburg. I imagine maybe same. Not sure about Amtrak California, to be honest. But judging by the fact that the population of Southern California is about 25 million, it's maybe half that of the Northeast Corridor. I don't think the distribution is as efficient because you want relatively even urban populations to fill trains, and the Northeast Corridor, New York is less dominant over Boston, Philly, DC than LA is over San Diego, but even relative to that, I mean, the fact that the Surfliner has like what, 1/15th, 1/20th or something of the ridership of the Northeast Corridor just tells you exactly how important it is. So Air New Zealand still does that. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about. So for people who don't know, Air New Zealand has this innovation where if you are traveling, when two people travel booking the ticket together, they have the option of paying for an entire row of three seats in economy class without paying for the full third seat. So I don't remember how much it is. Maybe maybe you remember. Is it 2.5 times or 2.25 times the price of a single ticket? So essentially, they will sell an empty seat to two people as at a discount, and the upshot is that this is also integrated into how the seats are designed. I don't think the pitch is any different, but but you can lift the bottom of the seat so that it turns into a little bit of a bed. So if you're incredibly snuggly and can curl your bodies in the right way, I mean, this is still a row of three seats, so I'm guessing it's something like 1.6 meters in length, which is not usually how long beds are. Beds are usually 1.90 m, maybe 2 meters. So if you can curl your legs a little bit and are very snuggly, then you can actually sleep fully lying down on the plane in coach. That's the idea. This is a place where now this is Air New Zealand we're talking about. The purpose of Air New Zealand is to connect you to and from New Zealand. I would like you to stare at this map or this satellite image for 5 seconds and ask yourself whether the model split of all non-airplane ways of getting to and from New Zealand is different from zero. Like, I'm sure there's a mad person who will do it by boat or something. And if you've read World War III, then sure. But no. So this is not a way of getting model split. This is essentially a way of offering a kind of premium economy experience. Which again is valid. It's a way. It's an important product for airlines that want to sell tickets to people who are never going to pay the premium for business class, but will pay a smaller premium. So premium economy is suddenly a thing. And this is essentially a way of doing premium economy, traveling to a place where, unless you're traveling to Australia, you are traveling for many hours, and you will want to sleep on the plane. You don't sleep to Australia. I mean, Auckland. What's the distance Auckland to Sydney? I don't want to wait for this to. You know, if I clicked on the wrong part of, I did click on the wrong part of New Zealand, Auckland to Sydney, and then all the Antipodeans will mock me for not knowing that. Yeah, so even this is 2,000 kilometers, and you're not sleeping on a 2,000 kilometer flight. I doubt it's intended for this. It will not surprise me if Air New Zealand flights to Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane don't even have that, but for like Singapore or Hong Kong, Bangkok, the US if they have direct flights, I don't know if they do. Singapore, yeah, you're sleeping on a plane. So that is essentially a form of premium economy. Um, but other than that, airplanes don't do this. There's a reason they don't do this. Um, Essentially, family tickets are too expensive. So if you want a significant family discount, what does this mean? It means, let's say it's a family of four. So first of all, planes like having rows of 3 seats. So even that is so even organizing the family to sit together is only possible on certain planes. 747s, 330s, what else? 380s. But first of all, I mean, a large majority of planes sold are narrow bodies. I think even a large majority, if you account for the fact that narrow bodies are smaller, are still the 320 and 737. Yeah, no. I mean, like Australia and New Zealand are far from everything and far from each other, and Australia is also far from itself. I had to actually someone, I don't remember if it was in my Discord, who said that the United States has a low public transport model split because it is such a large country and has such a tradition of driving long distances, and I had to actually that Australia is significantly less dense. Australia is about the same physical size as the contiguous United States, has less than a tenth the population. And yeah, I mean, you can maybe argue that it's maybe more concentrated in the corridor between Brisbane and Melbourne, and even that, I mean, Sydney to Melbourne, that's like New York to Chicago. That's not close by any European standards. And Australia's model split is not actually that low because so many Australians live in Sydney, and to a significant extent also Melbourne and Brisbane and Perth and Adelaide and Canberra. I think these are the capitals where you have like double digits model split. And Adelaide, I guess. And Sydney is I think 27% in the late 2010s. That the national model split in Australia is probably maybe a little bit less than in the UK or France or Germany. And again, I mean, this is where we're saying that local travel and interstate travel are very different. Australia is a place where interstate travel is done by plane. Because you don't have this kind of contiguous urbanization that would make random point to random point driving useful. I mean, no, you're going Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to Brisbane, maybe Melbourne to Brisbane, any of these to Adelaide, Perth, Darwin, if you're starting to dip down to like very small places. Yeah, of course you're fine. Like Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to Brisbane are, I don't know, they might be in the top 10 air travel corridors in the world still. I think it's these: Tokyo to Sapporo, Tokyo to Fukuoka, and Seoul to Jeju. So yeah, so the point is that airplanes, first of all, would have difficulty putting families together. Second, they actually can very easily sell the ticket instead of to a family of four, sell 4 tickets to individuals or sell 2 tickets to couples. Third, airline price discrimination works in a way that most of their revenue already comes from business travelers, so trying to scrounge a little bit more leisure travel is not usually great for them. And also the issue of fuel. The marginal cost of a passenger on a plane is very low. It's not zero, but it's still very low. But the issue of fuel means that the marginal cost, so the marginal cost of a new passenger on a plane is very low, not zero, but very low, but the marginal cost of a plane trip is very high. And this means you're not flying the plane unless it's full. The occupancy rate on planes is something like, I think, I don't remember what it is globally, we can check. I think it's like 70 or 80%. Canada's national model split is, I believe, 12%, like 10 or 12%. Like Canada is different because Toronto is not a 27% city, it's I think a 22% city, and so is Montreal. And the drop-off between them and Ottawa and Vancouver is pretty significant. Sorry, Calgary, you're kind of dropping out. Airline, average airplane, not frequency, seat occupancy. Let's see what we're gonna go. The average aircraft occupancy was 79, and this looks like a Dutch number, so I'm imagining it's everything in or out of Amsterdam, because I mean, it's the Netherlands. Is there any domestic air travel in the Netherlands? In Switzerland, there are flights between Zurich and Geneva. I don't know if anyone actually uses them OND, but they exist. Oh, they have 5 airports. Yeah. So not quite full recovery, but close to it. Higher than only a few years before Corona, and 80% of the seats were occupied either pure or post. Okay. So, okay, got where I came from. So the numbers on trains don't ever get there. Not on intercity trains. I think I've seen 70%, maybe 65% on the TGV. I think I've seen 65% on the Tokaido Shinkansen, which is widely believed to be at capacity. The TGV, I don't know to what extent people believe it's at capacity. Maybe the TGV Südest. But the number I've seen is for the system at large. In Germany, it's about 45 or 50%. The thing about trains is that the marginal cost of running the train once you have the railroad is not that high. It's not zero. It's not very low, but it's low enough that you should be running more trains off-peak. SNCF is leaving money on the table by not doing so. The actual above-the-rails costs of high-speed rail are low. There's energy, but the cost of energy is noticeable. It's not gonna kill you. And crew costs, yeah, they're there, but it's easier to schedule crew if you have flat service like Germany. And even then, the crew costs are not high. So even if you pretend marginal cost equals average cost, the average cost is not high either. Like, I mean, the Acela, I don't fully remember. The figure that I remember from the 2010s is 60% seat occupancy on the Acela, 45% regional. But the numbers may have increased in the later stages of the decade. My numbers are probably early 2010s. And note, by the way, that the TGV throws, another thing that the TGV is not good at is corridor travel. The TGV prefers point-to-point travel because they don't know how to turn seats over. Germany is better at this. Germany does not require to have a seat when you book a train. So in theory, German trains could go above 100% seat occupancy, and sometimes they do, but the average seat occupancy here is not actually high because the schedules are very flat. I mean, again, it's a good decision, but the point is that the train will have empty seats, and this means that you need to think how you're going to fill the empty seats. Trains also, because of how they work, you cannot do airline-style pricing on them. The TGV tries. So the TGV does have a system of the TGV has yield management. Doesn't higher rail frequency have better elasticity to service versus planes because you save time? Depends on which planes you're thinking of. Transatlantic, sure, but if you're trying to run competitive service on something like, if you're Ryanair and you're trying to compete with trains on, London to Amsterdam or something, which you probably are not competing with trains London to Amsterdam because anyone flying Ryanair can't afford the train tickets. But if Eurostar and Tallinn discovered that they don't have to charge premium prices, then this were more competitive, then it would actually matter what the frequency is. London to Amsterdam, I know. So London to Belgium is an hour and a half, I believe, by train. Maybe 2 hours actually. Yeah. It's maybe Paris to Brussels is an hour and a half, and then London to Brussels is about 2, and then to Amsterdam maybe it's 3.5 or something. So like it's like the trains in Belgium are slow. Like Brussels to Antwerpen is very slow. And so that would be something where the planes would have to have at least a decent frequency. They won't need to run on a tucked or anything, but like random 4-hour gaps will get people on the train. So anyway, so the economics of trains are that there are going to be a lot of empty seats, so you need to think how to compete for them. So this means it's okay to offer heavily discounted seats in order to get other passengers on. So no, this again differs from yield management. Yield management is you're selling different seats at different prices in order to do price discrimination. And trains, again, the TGV does that. The results aren't especially good. They personally annoy me, but the results, it's not also, they're also not bad in the sense that you can see them in like ridership estimate, in first order ridership levels either way, to be honest. It's just tradition. But the point is that if you do yield management, then you can't easily book people on the next train if the train is delayed. I mean, they do it on planes, but there's discretion there, so it depends on how good your sob story is if you missed your flight, or if the flight was cancelled. They have to rebook you, but planes don't rely on connections in the same way trains do, or the connections don't have to be tight. If it's transatlantic connections or something, then yeah, but it's kind of accepted that sometimes you get stranded at an airport and you have to stay at the airport hotel. It's viewed almost as a cost of doing business. And again, if it's transatlantic, what the hell are you going to do? Not take the trip, right? But if you try to do that behavior for trains between Paris and Berlin, people are just going to keep flying. So this means that you do need a much more robust system of connections, a much more robust system of any ticket, any train, a much more robust system of what happens if plans change last minute, a much more robust system of integration with regional trains, and this means that there's a limit to how much you can do airline-style yield management in which, no, seriously, most profit comes from a relatively narrow slice of customers. Again, you can do some of it, like SNCF has not collapsed because of this. SNCF's problems are not about yield management. But again, SNCF doesn't have Saturday night stay rules for flights, whereas transatlantic flights do. SNCF sells one-way tickets. I kept thinking, oh, there's probably yield management, so if I'm booking my trips on Amtrak to my family friend in Philly, I probably should be booking them as round trips to be cheaper, but no. I mean, Amtrak has its own yield management. No, I mean it's one-way tickets. I'm not getting any discount if I'm booking New York, Philly, New York versus booking them as one-ways. Um, and again, it boils down to the fact that there are going to be empty seats, and that's okay. Uh, and um, and so the upshot is that you do need to think of how to fill the empty seats. So you're going to fill them by definition. Um, if you have a hub and spoke system, don't you have a seat turnover? Airlines do it. Oh yeah. Oh, you mean that way? Yeah, airlines do it because people. Again, it's price discrimination for people who prefer one-ways, not one-ways, direct trips. Um, yeah. So Congress limited the spread between higher and lower priced buckets of the same seats on the same trains, but there's still yield management. Like there are buckets, there are fare buckets. Um, Germany only vaguely has that. Japan and Korea don't. I think China doesn't like it. And again, when we're talking about high-speed rail globally, remember we're mostly talking about China and secondarily Japan. Um, at the end of the day, uh, if you have a hub and spoke system, sure, but I mean, so if it's transatlantic flights don't work on on that kind of hub and spoke basis. They work on an international gateway basis. Um, separately, international flights also work on the basis of how competitive the airport is, which means that if you're flying into the United States from Europe, the cheapest airport to fly into is JFK. Um, to the point that if I'm flying to Boston, I have I have in the past flown into JFK just in order to take a train from JFK to Boston, like LIRR to Penn Station, Amtrak, New York to Boston, because the alternative to Boston was more expensive and also took longer. It would take longer because not a lot of places would have direct flights to Boston, and even if they did, like I think and even if they did, like Paris, often they were much more expensive. So if I was it was get an indirect flight to Boston, or get a direct flight to JFK and then train to Boston. Um, I have done this before. Um, and then of course New York is also often the destination anyway in the United States. Like if you're using New York JFK as your international gateway, I don't know what proportion of people doing that have New York as their final destination, but New York does have an outsized share of American, not American, an outsized share within America of international tourist stays. The process of transferring between international and a domestic flight in the United States is a chore because you need to go through immigration in JFK and recheck your baggage. So if you're traveling with luggage, never transfer in the United States from international to domestic. Transfer at Heathrow or something. Heathrow will actually connect you to most American cities. Charles de Gaulle, same. Frankfurt, same. And so it's different for that. I mean and then domestically, I don't actually know to what extent you have that premium for intra-European flights or for intra-American flights where the hubs are just going to be expensive because if you're flying to Atlanta, you're probably flying Delta. Delta doesn't need to care. Yeah, the last minute emails are long gone, but the last minute emails are, oh my god, we have empty seats. Let's, instead of getting $0 from them, get $5 from them. That's not a significant source of revenue. That's mostly building cred with people who enjoy bargain hunting. And the thing is, the people who enjoy bargain hunting are never going to pay more than $5 for a last minute ticket, so it doesn't actually matter that much for brand building or anything like that. I mean, if you're trying to get backpackers to get them to be brand loyal, sure, but 1973 called. 1973 is a randomly selected year in the post-war era, not as in the Yom Kippur War or the oil crisis. Like, I could have said 72 or 74. And so anyway, circling back to group tickets, the point of the group ticket is not to get people who will never pay higher rates. It's something different. The point of the group ticket is, no, I'm aware I'm aware that like there are people who are boomier than I am. I'm just saying there was a backpacking culture. My parents would tell me about this. They did it by car, and not, and there kind of isn't anymore. And there are boomers, some my age, some actually boomers, who bemoaned that, but who cares? Yeah, fair. Anyway, so the point of the group ticket is you need to be competitive with a car because it's circumstantial. Under a regime in which you don't have family discounts or group discounts, what happens is the sort of people who you're the sort of people who you're yeeting, the sort of people who are going to be in a car because, let's say, it's a group of 4 friends, or maybe a family of 3, family of whatever, these people still sometimes travel by themselves. And they might still opt for your train. I don't think that it has a very large brand building value. It has some. But it's mostly a cold calculation in which this same person will elect to use different modes of travel for different circumstances. I don't actually know the history of Via. All I know is that the present of Via is significantly worse than Amtrak. The corridor is significantly worse than the NEC. The current plans for the corridor somehow look even worse than Northeast Corridor plans. Yeah. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, yeah, and of course Amtrak in the 70s is not the Northeast Corridor specialty machine it is today. I can believe the figures from when Amtrak was founded to, I guess, the 2010s were passenger kilometers were about constant, just secular decline in the... I'm forgetting whether there's a breakdown between the night trains and the day trains, but secular decline in non-Northeast Corridor trains, increase in Northeast Corridor trains. I mean, isn't it called higher frequency rail or something? The thing that they stopped even trying to call it high speed rail. But anyway, so the point, so with group travel, the issue is that, again, it has some brand building value, but not a very large one. It's a cold calculation in which, so I don't own a car, I don't even know how to drive. Sid does not own a car. Sid has a driver's license. I don't remember when she last drove. Not in the 2020s. She may have driven a little bit in the 2010s. So, for Sid and me, whether there's a group ticket or not is irrelevant, right? The car does not exist as an option for us. Now, for people I know who do know how to drive but don't own cars because maybe they live in Berlin or they live in New York, and I don't mean the Cambria Heights parts of New York, even if it's not the Midtown Manhattan part of New York, and they don't own a car, the car is not meaningfully an option. So carless people will take your scheduled transport, or just not take the trip. Not taking the trip is also an option. Never forget that. That's also something you're always competing with. And Um, it could be but people who own a car or maybe have access to a car. Maybe it's something that I know in. Yeah, fair. Yeah, that's. I mean, I know such people. I know. Actually, I probably know a lot of people like that. Relative to their share of population because of where I live and what I do for a living. I end up like I know a lot of people through this stream or through my blog or through public transportation activism, um, and people like that are disproportionately likely not to drive, and this includes paper drivers. Um, and yeah, so and even if I meet people in a different circumstance, when I say that I work in like public transportation, usually the ones who are more interested are again likelier to not be driving. Um, but anyway, the uh, so for people like that, the model split's is always going to be 100% train, but the option is not to take the trip if it's too complex, which has happened. There are trips that I would have taken if the trains in Europe were faster. I say Europe and not Germany because all of these are international trips. So now we're in Copenhagen trying to both do tourism and meet a work. Uh, I don't know what word to use for someone who is in the same field as Sid, but I don't think they've ever worked on the same project. Um, Maybe business colleague of Sid, and we didn't meet the business colleague because family emergency. Would we have gotten back up there if Berlin to Copenhagen was, let's say, 2 hours by train or 2.5 hours? Okay, 2 hours is pushing it. Like, yeah, if the tunnel were here, it could do it in 2 hours, but it's not. Um, let's not be too high on copium. But if it were 3 hours, yeah, we probably would have done it. It was 7. I have a friend in Köln who wanted to meet us in, not in Köln, Bonn, who wanted to meet us in Hamburg, and then to our mutual horror, we realized that this trip is 5 hours. We thought it was 3. Now, obviously, a straight line kind of lies, but it's not like it's a very squiggly line or anything. Like you go Bonn to Köln, switch your train in Köln. There are direct trains that go that don't make you go the long way around. Then you go to Hannover, and then Hannover to Hamburg. And somehow this, instead of being the hour and change it should be, I think it's like 2 hours 15 or something. 2:15. So yeah, no. So between this being slow, and transfer time, yeah, 5 hours. No. So anyway, so this is an example of trips that are missing because of slowness, but also high prices can deter people. Usually not if it's a single person or a couple or two friends. If they're reasonably middle class, and these are European, and again these are European train fares that I'm talking about. So I'm sometimes annoyed at last minute fares, but they're not a meaningful deterrent. Yeah. So I was about to talk about one car household. Thanks for this is not a tangent. This is the next topic that I was going to talk about. Thanks, Marta. Yeah, then you have households that have access to a car, but it's not easy access. So it could be families that only have one car for the entire family, rather than the American norm of one car per adult, or sometimes one car per person age 16 or more. The people driving at age 16 in America boggles the mind. Or adults still living with their parents, which is a pretty hefty share of adults in the United States and even in the parts of Western Europe that are not Scandinavian. and it's not just an Italian thing, it's a German and French thing too. Like often people leave home at like 23 or 25, not 18. And yeah, the middle class norm is that you should get a car, but most people are not middle class. In the United States, also that's the working class norm as well. And it's also a working class American norm to pretend you're middle class, but that's a separate thing. Yeah. So yeah, this could be a one-car family. By the way, I mean in cities that are not great for public transit, but also are not Houston, one car families are not that unusual. Like my parents were a one car household until I'm trying to remember when they first got their second car, and I think I was maybe 8 or 9 at the time, and I grew up very solidly middle to upper middle class. But in Tel Aviv, I mean, my parents worked at the same place. So for commuting, one car was enough. Also, it was a pretty short drive. For intercity trips, I mean, they're family trips. You only need a car. For errands, you don't compete with it for the car anyway. So, I mean, yeah. I think now that I'm thinking about it, my understanding is it's mostly a Gen X and up thing, and it's not that common among millennials anymore. Like more and more states are not allowing that. But I've seen the charts in like urbanist activism from like the 2000s, in like early 2010s when millennial was a byproduct for not byproduct, wrong word. Where millennial was a byword for young person and not old person. And then the rates of driving among millennials were much lower than among Xers and proper boomers at equivalent ages. And which is partly just a transition to like more pro-urban norms, but also like this. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's one-car households. It's one-car households that are not family households, like a bunch of housemates live together, very common in, for example, Boston, and then only one of them has a car. Or maybe none of them has a car in place, but one of them has a grandparent in a suburb half an hour away that they can requisition the car of for a group trip. So in examples like this, the logic of rail fares that don't have any group discounts often militates in favor of just using the car for intercity trips, because at the end of the day, trains are designed to be competitive with one person in a car, not with 4. So this includes family trips, includes group trips. Now the group trips, I think, are less common. Like the example that I just told you of the housemates living together, that's something that I have seen, but it's not that common. I think I saw it in grad school. One of my grad school classmates, the one who, starting about probably 3rd year, when like the hotshot from Peking burned out. So after the hotshot from Peking burned out around 2nd year, this one person that I'm talking about was, if you asked us in 3rd year, okay, assume that only one person in the year is going to get a tenure track job after just a single 3-year postdoc, who is it going to be? And everyone was going to probably give that person's name, and that turned out to be the correct answer. Anyway, he did not have a car in fucking Manhattan, but I think he had a grandfather or something who lived, I want to say in Rye, somewhere in Metro North territory, and he parked his car there. So a bunch of grad students, not me, but a bunch of grad students were going up to somewhere in New England, not Boston, not like Boston, like maybe New Hampshire or Vermont for maybe ski, maybe sightseeing. I imagine ski because sightseeing, I might have joined them in ski you can see solid evidence that I did not go on a ski trip, namely I'm not dead. This is not a deep fake. This is not AI generated video. I am alive, from which you can conclude I have never skied in my life. Yeah, of course they would drive. I mean, there were like, I don't know how many of them, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. Yeah, of course you're going to Metro North up to Rye and then drive, and you're going to try to figure out how to take Amtrak to Vermont, or a bus to Vermont, because as soon as it's multiple people, why? But again, that's not a very common use case for group trips. Usually these group trips are family tickets. When Borners was asking me to vlog about this, Borners specifically mentioned family tickets. I'm adding group tickets as part of the use case, but it's mostly family. This is going to be significant. Why is it significant? Because one of the ways you can do this is child discounts. You want to offer child discounts because you want to structure your discounts in a way that is not going to give people free tickets or very cheap tickets that they would have paid full fare for. Europe has made a collective decision that, for the most part, an intercity rail ticket, a domestic intercity rail ticket, and some international ones that are not Thalys or Eurostar, shall cost on the order of 10 or 11 euro cents per passenger kilometer. And yeah, it's not rigid, it is degressive, it is, even in Germany, it depends on time of day, day of week. That's not yield management. Yield management is not when you sell different seats for different prices. It's when you sell the same seat on the same train for different prices. But this is what it averages to, and obviously at less busy times we're going to offer cheaper tickets, but sorry, but you can't you can't run a railroad in current European cost structure and average, let's say, 6 or 7 euro cents per kilometer in fares. I mean, I suspect that if you had to do a lot of low-cost carrier style cost cutting, and when I say low-cost carrier, let's not talk about Ryanair in EasyJet. Let's talk about Southwest. Southwest being, for example, somehow more unionized than the American legacy carriers, because Southwest is predominantly unionized, and among the 3 American legacies at this point, American, United, or Delta isn't. But for example, using fewer onboard workers, using workers in multiple jobs, like how in Southwest they have people acting as both ticket agents and flight stewardesses, and on railroads I'm not gonna invent low cost railroading on the fly for you guys right now, but I mean, I imagine it's possible to do this. The marginal cost is less than 7 euro cents per kilometer. I think it's more like 5. But there are non-marginal costs. So you probably can't run a 7 euro cents per kilometer railroad. You can run at 10 and not an 11 or 12, but 10 is not 7. So you don't want to just do it as a global fare cut. You're going to start running into capacity issues, and then the costs are suddenly not just marginal above the rails. You might need to buy new train sets. That's not that expensive. Actually, what is the cost of just a train set? Let's not talk about maintenance for a second, even though that matters. The train set has, let's let's see, 16 cars, let's say. Let's do a long boy, not a short boy. So 16 cars. It's about 3.7 euros, not dollars per car, right? So it's like this. I think it's about 60 million. I think it's like 30 million for a short boy and 60 for a long boy. So it's 60 million for a long boy. I never remember the annual maintenance cost. I'm going to ex facto say that maintenance on the train is going to double your cost. Like the life cycle cost of the maintenance is the same as the initial purchase. I don't remember. I could be off. Train lasts 40-ish years, let's say, if you do linear depreciation. So that's per year. How many kilometers does a high-speed train go per year? I'm going to say 500,000. This is on the high side for Europe. You could do 1 million if the train went at high speed the entire way, but welcome to Europe. I think the average TGV goes 300. So rolling stock costs like 6-ish euros per train kilometer. And I mean, look, the train has like close to 1,000 seats. Let's say straight 1,000, even though that's, I think, a little bit too much. Not all these seats are occupied. So what do we say, 45%? Yeah, so this is about a cent, maybe a bit more than a cent, euro cent and dollar cent, of extra revenue you need to recover from passengers per kilometer just for rolling stock costs. That's not a marginal cost of off-peak service, but it is a marginal cost of if you need to boost peak service. Yeah, I hate flying too. I don't think I've ever been on Southwest. Yeah, so the so the point of this exercise is, I mean, even like a cost that I don't think is huge is still, I mean, that's still a cent point something per passenger kilometer. And so you want to do this as a way of encouraging off-peak. Oh, thanks. Thanks for watching, and catch the rest on YouTube when I upload. Yeah, and so what you want for the group fares is, you want to try to use them to incentivize using the trains when they're less busy. This is generally a problem with train travel. Train travel peaks differently from air travel, because train travel has a very prominent weekend peak. So the family peak is the same as the general peak. So you want to offer cheaper tickets for children, or maybe for groups. If it's adults and children, then you want to have deeply discounted children, but bear in mind that you're still going to deal with peaking, because the leisure travel market is usually stuff like weekend trips. The whole point is the train trips are generally shorter than plane trips, in the sense of door to door. A family in Berlin will absolutely train trip to Munich and back. It's 4.5 hours with a pinch at Leipzig, 4 if you go through Halle, not counting the extra travel time due to train delays. I don't think I have ever been to Munich without a train delay. There was this one time when, I think the first time, Sid and I had a 2.5 hour delay the way back. So in a hypothetical scenario in which Deutsche Bahn has seen a timetable, that's 4 hours, let's say. Yeah, that's a weekend trip. I talk about a hypothetical family in Berlin that does that. Hi, I live in Berlin. Technically, I'm in a family of 2. Yeah, we've done this. It's like a couple days. Also, we somehow managed to do it during Oktoberfest, because neither of us drinks, so we didn't know it was Oktoberfest. And so the hotel was much more expensive than anticipated. And we were surrounded by people, by people who, judging by accents, were American, dressed in like something that they thought was traditional Bavarian dress. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It's not like I know what traditional Bavarian dress is. Usually when I think of traditional Bavaria, I think of a very well-known geopolitical actor that came through. It's not originally from Bavaria and was not toward the end mostly supported in Bavaria, but in its formative years was based around here. And so yeah, so for the group tickets, you do want to be careful not to overload the weekend peak, because that is going to be family travel. The reason for airline Saturday night stay rules is that Saturday night stay rules pick out family travel, because business travelers travel during weekdays, and then they spend weekends with their families. So you want to, if you're an airline, you want to charge higher rates to these business travelers, because usually these are necessary business trips. Often someone else is paying anyway, like some kind of anonymous HR. Like the person making the decision of flying is probably a line worker. I mean, a middle class business worker, but someone who's probably nobody's boss, or at most a team leader, rather than someone who thinks in terms of budgets. And this person probably thinks that budget is like HR or something, and apparently everyone who works in corporate hates HR worse than the average Pole hates Putin. So yeah. And so the upshot is that with trains, if you do family tickets, you're encouraging weekend travel. In France, weekends are when the peak already is, same as on the Northeast Corridor, to the point that people are starting to shift toward giving themselves long weekends, traveling Thursday to Tuesday. I would do that all the time, traveling New York to Philly or New York to Boston. I mean, if I didn't have any obligations Monday or Friday, I would absolutely do that. With family travel, it's harder to do that because cutting school is not socially acceptable very much. So it's in a very narrow peak. And this is something that you need to be wary of if you're doing family tickets. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do family tickets. Again, you do want to subsidize children on this. Again, partly because of like the just cold logic of the same person who would take the train for a business trip between Berlin and, I don't know, Bonn. There are a couple of direct trains that make very few stops because they're designed for government workers. They're not especially expensive or something. It's not like the German. It is like German pricing doesn't work that way on trains, but these trains exist. Sydney rode one once when it made sense, so people who would do these kind of business trips by train would then drive with their family to, I don't know, sightsee, and I don't even know where. I don't actually know where the good German out-of-city sightseeing spots are. I mean, yes, I'm aware of the existence of Schwarzwald and so on, but I don't have a good feel of like what the biggest resort hotspots are, and if the trains are kind of meh and they're still paying for scheduled transport, maybe they're just flying to coastal resorts in Spain, the Riviera, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, maybe Turkey. Like if you're flying, then you're actually like flying changes the logic of travel so much, in that from Munich or something, Nice is very close by. It's an hour away. Athena is like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. But so much of the cost of air travel, the time cost of air travel, is not on a plane in the air, that the difference is not actually that significant. So this is how you have people flying to Antalya from all over Germany. And it's much cheaper than flying to, the Riviera is just expensive at this point, than flying to, I don't know, Alicante. Which one is Alicante? Like, this is Valencia. Alicante is like here or something. Alicante here. Yeah, so Alicante is same distance as Athena. I don't know what the Greek resorts are. I don't know, Crete or something. It's a little farther away. Nicosia is around here. Antalya, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same. So it's just a matter of where you have cheaper landing fees or cheaper hotels. And trains actually do keep distance in mind. So I think I vlogged about this multiple times, talking about how better leisure travel by train, for example, faster trains, would change geography, because it would mean that from, let's say, southern Germany, even high-speed trains to Turkey are not really viable. But high-speed trains to Italy are, so it means much more travel to tourism destinations in Italy. Maybe southern France, if they ever get around to having trains that are faster than the highway between Genova and Nice. Currently, they are not. Currently, it is significantly faster to drive this. Italian motorways are incredibly good for fast driving, by which I mean they have very high tolls and they're built to very high standards. Between Genova and Milano, you're fucking doing 200 kilometers an hour. So. Maybe not the entire way, but on sections of the motorway. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're spending a lot on tolls, but I mean, you get a good road. And I think even then, maybe Milano to Genova. I'm not sure a normal car beats the train. But Genova to Nizza, I guess, fast road, slowest train. So if the train's stopping slow-ass, and if they don't charge these rates, they charge, let's say, these rates, or these rates, or these rates, or these rates, or these rates, then you're just gonna get way more leisure travel doing things like this, like I'm not sure, like something like this, right? Innsbruck, and then the new tunnel they're building, like to Firenze, Roma, Milano, if that's your time, Napoli. Just urbanizes, it just urbanizes leisure travel so much. Again, I'm used to it because I go where the train goes, but it means that even people with other options would think that way, because the train would be so much better. And the group tickets essentially do the same thing, but selling it for fares. Now again, the group tickets are not already competing with the airlines, because the airlines cannot offer you a group ticket. I mean, they can if they enjoy losing money. Enjoy losing money. They do it, but very often they lose money, but not intentionally. And so you're trying to compete with a car. You're trying to compete for mostly interstate travel, but also even with the idea of the destination. So what I mean the idea of the destination is, model choice is not just about going to a fixed destination. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, okay, I live in Berlin and I want to visit the following, and let's say I do own a car. I don't, but let's say I own a car. And I want to visit these destinations within Germany. This is a fixed list. Do I go by car or by train? That's not usually how it works. Rather, the choice of destination co-evolves with the ability to travel there. By which I mean, because I think so much about rail travel, I think about how to go to, again, to Hamburg, München, and so on. A car owner would go there as well, but would probably think much more about going to various non-urban destinations that are much more accessible by car and much less accessible by train. Things like wine-growing country here, or again Schwarzwald, or I don't know if Harz has any interesting tourism, probably. Um, or Saxon Switzerland is this area, because it is very mountainous. I don't think that they named it this way uh, in recognition that it probably is about as racist as Switzerland, uh, but probably, but somehow that fits. Pirna has an AfD mayor, and that's not even in the mountains. That's kind of a city. Um, And yeah, so you go up to Saxon, Switzerland. Maybe you do it by car. Maybe Saxon, Switzerland you might actually be able to do by train than hike. I know people have done that, but that's something that's much more of you can do it either way. Munich is maybe more of a, especially from Berlin, like long distance is much more of a train thing, just because at long distances the higher average speed of a train does matter. And then a place like, and again, like the vineyards or various castles or again Schwarzwald, that's car. So often you're competing by offering your destination up as something better than another destination offered by a competitor. And if you think that this is a weird thing, as I said in the video they must have uploaded years ago, Niagara Falls are pretty, like, Niagara Falls are pretty, but the New York Central still marketed the hell out of them because the main route from New York City to the falls was on the water level. Same thing with Marias National Park here, it's on the Great Northern. Same thing with Lake Louise, that's just where the Canadian Pacific crossed the Rockies. Jasper, I think, had the same thing for the Canadian National. But yeah, Lake Louise is a resort that was developed specifically by Canadian Pacific, because it was on the way. So it's not like a person from, I don't know, Toronto would say, let's say before jet travel, so let's say 1930s or maybe early 50s, does not really think, I really want to go to Lake Louise, let's choose whether I am taking the Canadian Pacific or Canadian National. No. This person is probably deciding between Lake Louise and Canadian Pacific and Jasper and Canadian National. And it's the same thing with car versus train. And so group travel is fixed destination, but also helps move things toward the destination that you want. This is entirely a discussion on intercity rail, where it's something that's important, but bear in mind that you are overloading a peak. Now, it's a completely different discussion if instead of talking about intercity rail, we're talking about regional rail. Because as soon as we're talking about things that are regional or interregional, where the peak is based on commuters. Okay, let's actually maybe not use the term intercity and regional because these are terms denoting distance. Let's instead use the term railway where you have significant commuting and railway where you do not have significant commuting, and understand that on some TGV city pairs there is extensive commuter travel, or on Shinkansen there's extensive commuter travel. I believe that on Shinkansen the peak is actually normal weekday 9 to 5 peak, judging by the timetables by when the highest frequency is. Is the Shinkansen regional? Lol, no, it is intercity, but people do take the Shinkansen as a commuter train from Atami, for example, or Mishima, to Tokyo. And it's actually a pretty significant use case, especially going north of Tokyo, where there's more ridership on the Tohoku plus Joetsu plus Hokurika Shinkansen system than from the Sanyo. Than on Sanyo, if you measure passengers but not passenger kilometers. Like the average trip length on the JR East Shinkansen network is not high. So on such a railway, in general, so on such a railway, you don't have a weekend intercity peak. You may have it as a secondary peak, but as long as the primary peak is a commuter peak, you much more aggressively want to encourage group travel because you're Because the calculation I showed you before about the extra cost of buying new rolling stock, that's irrelevant. The rolling stock pre-exists. Please run more. No, bear in mind, you still have operating costs, again, energy and to some extent the drivers, but that's still something you want to encourage. And oh, and GB it's pretty much tied. Okay, yeah. Because I imagine a lot of people commute to London from pretty far out. So this is something that I don't know. So because I don't know England on this, I somehow know Scotland better because Scots sometimes explain to me, oh, these are nice places to visit in Scotland. I don't actually know what the interesting weekend tourism by rail out of London is. So I genuinely don't know what tourism in England, and again, specifically England because the nice mountains are not in England, are other than the city. Because for example, in France, I could tell you that, oh yeah, the TGV in general has an intercity peak, but it has a secondary commuter peak, and on some lines I believe it's a primary. I think maybe not now going southwest, but going southwest before they extended the TGV all the way to Bordeaux, when it went only all the way. Sorry, not only all the way. That's not correct. When it went only up to Tours and Le Mans. There was a weekday peak, not a weekend peak. Maybe there still is. Again, I don't know. But this is much more intercity. And also, there's I think way nicer tourism here than here. So, if you have a more commuter-oriented peak, let's say long-range regional lines out of New York, like things from New York to the Jersey Shore or Long Island, that's where you definitely need group travel. And something that I want ETA to work on, and by want ETA to work on, I mean I'm essentially volunteering other people's time, the time of people who don't work for me, so this is where it's not happening. We just haven't gotten to it yet. But something like encouraging group travel, things like New York to, again, the Jersey Shore. I think the nice beaches on Long Island are car accessible, very infamously so. But the Hamptons are a weekend destination, but they're far, and they're the Hamptons. So I don't know what extent that's viable. Hudson Highlands. There's a lot of really pretty stuff up the Hudson and Harlem lines. The Hudson line is a really pretty railway trip. Separately, it's also a rather busy commuter railway. Most of the ridership, it's just rich commuters from here going to work here, and I don't even think that they're rich because they specifically pick the place for the vistas. Again, it's pretty, but it's rich in the sense that this is generally a very rich suburban region of New York. Westchester is, I believe, the richest. Westchester is certainly the richest suburban county in the region. I'm not sure. By average per capita income, it doesn't beat Manhattan. I think it might actually be number 2 region-wide. That's like Manhattan, Westchester, and then everyone else. Median Westchester might beat Manhattan. Manhattan has disgustingly high inequality. Oh, the West Country. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because there are still the coastal resorts in Sussex, as in the song that I recited last night. But yeah, I guess yeah, you're right. People do go to beaches in Sussex and such. I don't know, is Portsmouth a destination for that? So yeah, for that you would want to make sure you have group tickets, because these leisure trips are often done in groups. It's incredibly competitive, especially competitive when people can go to a different leisure destination. Like, I mean, there absolutely is a thing where it's too expensive to do a domestic trip and to, like, I don't know, Wales or the Scottish Highlands or something. Okay, let's fly to Mallorca instead. That's absolutely a thing people would do. I mean, I'm giving British examples, like names of British things. It's entirely a thing in Germany as well. It's too expensive or too difficult for me to do my circuit of cities, of really pretty cities in Germany and Czechia and Austria. Let's fly to Cyprus. Let's fly to, again, Mallorca. Uh, yeah, so if you are capable of doing so, then yeah, you should. Um, Again, probably subsidizing children is the easiest because children don't commute. Or if they do, I mean, okay, you accidentally subsidized someone's commute to school. Fundamentally, who cares? Like, don't do the American welfare state thing where they spend millions to save thousands by doing drug tests of like welfare recipients. Where like it always turns to be much more expensive to do the control than the actual amount of money that you're saving, and we're talking orders of magnitude. So don't do the thing where you want to make sure that it's definitely for this, or like maybe do a child rides for like half fare or like even less than half fare. Maybe in the presence of an adult. That's okay. I mean, yeah. Again, yeah, you're gonna get some commuter parents who take their children with them, and then the children go to school and the parents go to work. First of all, that's still a family trip where you are competing with a car because the parents are capable of driving to work and dropping off the kids at school on the way. It's an incredibly common American thing. That was my commute to primary school for a while. And so you do want to even be competitive with that, to be honest. And the school peak is not going to be the same as the worker peak. Anyway, school starts at like 8, right? And work at 9. So, but again, weird corner cases. Mostly we're talking about leisure travel, and so that's something. So on regional railways, you absolutely want to do that. The regional railways are mostly going to be empty unless they have commuters or in Germany, people doing Deutschlandticket to get free intercity trips, and then these are notable for their total lack of turnover. Now, if you have a Deutschlandticket, you've automatically subsidized everyone's regional rail trips anyway, so it's not like you have more things that you can do. Maybe intercity if you have if you have a peak commute. I don't know to what extent it's a thing in Germany. I don't know to what extent people actually do. I don't know, Leipzig to Berlin or things like that. That's an hour 15, so that's absolutely viable as a rail super commute. My understanding is that in Germany it's not much of a thing because Germany does not have a London or a Paris. Like it's not like, I mean, okay, you work in London and earn a London wage, and then you live in not London and pay not London rent. And yeah, I mean, not London is a very large country where Surrey is, sorry I'm giving it a Canadian pronunciation, Surrey is not the same rent as, I don't know, I want to say the less nice parts of Essex, but that's just known as Essex. Let alone things are actually far from London. So you do the super commute. Because again, Surrey is expensive for not London. And again, same thing in Paris, same thing in France, where yeah, you can live in Toul and ride the train to the capital, that's fine. But in Germany, there's just much less of a gradient in incomes and in rents between big city and things around it. Like there is a gradient, but it's a regional rail gradient, not an intercity rail gradient. Like Paris, like the reason people do this commute is maybe it's a branch office, or maybe it's just even expensive to live in Ile-de-France. So your choices are you pay Parisian or middle class parts of Ile-de-France rents, you live in Saint-Denis, or you super commute. uh, and often supercommuting is the right choice. Not very often, but often, but sometimes it is, even if you don't like object to the skin color of the people of Cincinnati, which sadly most French people appear that they do object. Um, and so in Germany, it's not as much of a thing. I imagine to some extent a thing, but I don't think there's much of a thing of people doing weird commutes like Leipzig to Berlin, Magdeburg to anywhere. Um, Again, Berlin's also not very wealthy, but I mean, okay, Munich, okay, it's very wealthy in Munich, but that's all of Bavaria. You're like not, oh, and also all of Baden-Württemberg. So it's not like there's no tool here. Like, I mean, the closest thing is you commute from Germany to Switzerland, um, and then you're earning extremely high Swiss nominal wages, and then you're either just not paying city rent or Basel rents, and you're paying German rent instead, or conversely, you live in Basel and then do your shopping in Germany, so you still pay Basel rents, but you pay Aldi prices, German Aldi prices. Uh, I mean, yeah, people do that. I mean, but I know, like at least in my social circle, it's something that people did in 2022 for the novelty and maybe once again Deutschland ticket, and then they went back to normal habits. Like I don't think it became like a permanently sticky thing. Um, and my social circle is not exclusively middle class here. Um, I don't know how like exactly class representative it is. It's, I mean, by definition, urban, but it's a pretty class mixed uh, spectrum of queer Berlin. Like queer Berlin is not actually class stratified. Um, like there aren't separate spaces for middle class and working class queers at meetups, and that's always kind of awkward when you have a bunch of middle class people with middle class expectations go to meetups, and then there are people there who are literally homeless and live in squats. Like it's not like they're not rough sleeping. That's not actually a thing in Berlin, or if it is, it's extremely uncommon. Um, as in, I've maybe seen it once, and I hang around Alexanderplatz a lot, and that would be the place where it would be done. This is not like San Francisco. Like San Francisco has homeless people who are actually rough sleeping. Berlin has shelters. Berlin has, and if and the shelters suck, but they're shelters. It has squats. Um, so yeah, it has a lot of couch surfing. And yeah, so anyway, I bring this up because again, that is a thing, but it's not. I don't think it's a very large thing. It's essentially an emergency. Like if the hotel in Hamburg is so terrible, you need to go early. And the and of course that means that you get free group travel, but because you get free travel in general. Again, I don't know to what extent it would matter for intercity. If people want, I can check what the current praxis is, but I would not know whether it's very common. I can tell you that I see families on trains and I see children on trains in Germany, but I don't have a good feel for how common this is. Oh my god, why are you showing me the ads before you're letting me book the goddamn ticket? Why is this website bad? Okay, phone. Let's say, no, fuck, wait. It's gonna take forever to load. Let's do this. Let's not do too early. No, let's not do too late because, okay. Phone. Berlin, let's say to. Let's just do. Let's say I'm traveling to Köln. Köln Hauptbahnhof, Reisende. let's see if it's one. Let's say one person. Zuchan. And then see. So this is one adult, and then let's see what happens if it's one adult and one not adult. I think they also have. I imagine they say 27 to 64 because they also have young person discounts. What the fuck are these fares? What the hell is going on that in the middle of the day on Thursday they're saying the train is very full and they're charging me 120 euros. I am unsatisfied by the state of affairs. Oh, okay, it's just okay. It is cheaper. Okay, it is cheaper if I'm willing to get there at midnight or at 11 o'clock, 11 midnight. Now to be fair, I am. This is the faster train, the one that I think continues to Bonn. What is their problem? Anyway, so most of these are going to be 120. Let's say the late afternoon to evening ones. Okay, so eine Persona. And one who is Kent 6 to 14 Jahre. Übernehmen, then ändern. So instead of 120, how much extra? Wait, what? Wait, is the child actually riding for free? Wait, what? Okay, that's much more aggressive than I thought. What if it is this? And I'm just so weirded out by free child travel that I'm looking at whether I accidentally made an error. No, okay, it's just free child. Okay, so children under 15 traveling with parents in Germany appear to be riding for free. Or at least on the expensive trains riding for free. Okay. I imagine it would be a fixed percent. It just appears that it is 100%. And this is very strange. Although, again, not that strange. Okay, so this is the situation on a Thursday. What happens if instead of on a Thursday, Anfrage and okay, this. Let's do Friday. What happens then? Is it gonna get worse or better? This is Berlin to Köln, so it should be a. Why is it cheaper on a Friday? Is it just a? I guess maybe Berlin to Köln is just an atypically business-oriented city pair. So they have. So even on Friday, suddenly the trains are massively cheaper and massively less crowded because that's. Okay, that actually makes sense because, I mean, okay, I just told you about commuter and non-commuter peaks, and now I'm looking at a city pair where I'm seeing a massive weekday peak and not a weekend peak. Remember, this is not just the fares, like they're telling you how crowded they expect the train to be. So this is a train that they expect to be less crowded, because it's only 2 people and not 3 people on this. So that's why they're charging less, and yeah, so that actually makes sense for why they would do aggressive group discounts to the point that the child appears to be riding for fucking free. If it's just one adult, then is it still the same fares? Yeah, 80 instead of, okay. I don't think it's DB inefficiencies. The fact that the website looks like I designed it in a dream with the help of ChatGPT, so my coding skills dreams, like sleeping and ChatGPT. That's probably the website. But other than that, oh yeah, yeah maybe. Again, I don't know if I would go as aggressively as free. But for example, the Northeast Corridor probably is going to have a weekday commute peak, just because the Northeast does not have the giant income gaps that are seen between London and the rest of the United Kingdom. This is not an England thing. Scotland is not wealthy. Um, like the S&P is doing some very nice things, uh, they did Yosef was doing the Trump thing of talking about the Holocaust without ever mentioning the Jewish people. Um, and then people say that people of color are not assimilating to European culture. Like, yeah, this is, yeah. Um, I mean, this is Europe as it is. It's like, I mean, it's not any different from like how any other Euro acts. And so but like it's not, but they're not wealthy the way London is. New York doesn't have these giant income gaps with the rest of the Northeast Corridor. Even Philly is not poor. Philly has poverty. Philly is not West Virginia. But there is a big rent difference, especially with the cities in between, because New Haven and Providence, and Trenton, and again to an extent even Philly. Also, I guess Wilmington, maybe Baltimore has cheap rents near city center. I don't know. Rather, cheap rents available to people who would be commuting to DC, um, which is not the same as cheap rents, but you need to qualify for public housing. Um, and so, point is, there is going to be a bunch of commuting. Like, there's going to be a commuter peak, Trenton to New York, New Haven to New York. Um, so, I don't know if children riding free is a solution, but children riding for a deep discount is a solution. Uh, because again, you do want to fill the train, not just during peak. And yeah, there is also going to be a secondary peak that's not commuting. I think the Northeast Corridor, I blogged about this, I don't remember when, maybe last month, that I think it stands to be a very efficient corridor just because if the trains run fast, then there's going to be a lot of these different peaks at different times. So a leisure peak and a commuter peak, and a business travel peak that's not commuting. Um, but but I don't think the leisure peak, the one where family travel is the most significant, is going to be the primary one. So it's still okay to push a secondary peak. For example, reverse peak travel is a secondary peak. You just want to avoid pushing more demand onto the primary peak, if that makes sense. In what way is the UK Korea enter? Oh, rich capital, everywhere else is poor. That's not Korea. Um, I saw this for Japan and Korea recently because people were asking. Now, GDP per capita is kind of fake news at the subnational level. So yes, it means that all of the commuters from Kanagawa and Chiba and Saitama count in the numerator but not the denominator here. But the interesting thing is that if you average out Tokyo with Kanagawa, which is way below average, and of course Chiba and Saitama are near the bottom because these are not very wealthy places, and also separately out commuters, then you're getting 13% higher than the average for Japan. There isn't actually a big capital rest of country income difference in Japan, or in South Korea. Again, there's more GDP per capita in the capital than in the suburbs. I think it's also toward the level of income. Like, I don't think it's just a commuter aspect. My understanding is that Tokyo has directionality, like rich west and south, poor north and east. Yeah, the Yamanote versus Shitamachi distinction based on altitude, and also rich center, poor not center. But everything averaged together is not that much richer than provincial Japan. Yeah, exactly. EMB, no, but South Korea is the same. South Korea is, like, I was checking this a couple days ago when people on Discord were asking. Um, so, besides the fact that Seoul isn't even number one, uh, and maybe Ulsan has a bigger commute artifact or whatever. I mean, South Korea is this is Seoul, this is Gyeonggi, this is Incheon. Like, if you average them, you're getting a couple percent more than the national average. Um, yeah. Oh, and Aichi. Aichi might be artifacts of that too. Like, I think Aichi. Like, I think that my understanding is that Nagoya Metro includes Aichi and a few and bits of other prefectures. It's not as coterminous with prefectures the way that Metro Tokyo is mostly, not entirely, but mostly just Tokyo, Kanagawa, Chiba, and Saitama, and Metro Osaka is, or I guess Metro Kanshin is Osaka, Kyoto, and Hyogo. Uh, yeah, exactly. So the other 20% is not going to be exactly coterminous with us. Yeah, sure, but yeah, exactly. So the point is that uh, EMBSM does reduce this, whereas in London, for example, Sadiq Khan just said that he is going to target 40,000 social housing units over 5 years, and that's going to be a quarter of the total built in London. So, by implication, he's targeting that London should build 32,000 housing units every year. That's about 3.5 per thousand people per year. Berlin, I'm not sure how much Berlin builds now, but because interest rates are rising, but up through about 2021, Berlin was building 5 per thousand. Berlin is much poorer than London, and non-Berlin Germany is far, far, far richer than non-London Britain. Like, non-Berlin Germany might plausibly be the richest place in Europe. Like, richest place, like, removing capital. Okay, and Berlin's not especially wealthy. Non-Munich Germany, non-Munich or Frankfurt or Stuttgart or Hamburg Germany, exactly. Like, Germany does not have very large interregional inequalities. Um, and yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, so yeah, and of course in Tokyo, they are building not 3.5 but more like 10. Uh, yeah. So anyway, so anyway, the point is that in a place like London or Paris, you are gonna see real supercommuting, and what's it called? In New York, I mean, yeah, but I don't think it's exactly a matter of NIMBYism. Like, it's just, like, the regional, like, I suspect part of the supercommuting, remember, supercommuting is not something poor people do. Supercommuters in the United States have higher than average incomes, so it's not exactly a matter of this. The big differences in incomes are, but remember, the Northeast Corridor does not have very large differences in incomes. What? Anyway, the no, in the U.S. it's often dual income families, like one person is New York, the other is tethered to the suburbs. Oh, I mean, okay, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. They should turn the golf course at Cockfosters into something more useless, into something not more useless, into something more useful than a golf course, aka anything from like a sludge landfill up. It's in outer London. Um, but anyway, yeah. So the so anyway, the point is that in the United States, all of it is like rich snobs not wanting to live in the city. Is part of this. That's not the same as interregional inequality. Again, the Northeast region does not have high interregional inequality. The United States has, I think, maybe comparable interregional inequality to France and less than the UK. The UK has some disgustingly high interregional inequality. I think the US is more France and Germany, and not UK or Italy. But Northeast is a macro region that's like on the wealthy side of this. So the super commuting comes from other places. And again, and faster trains, just because you have multiple centers, a lot of it is just going to be dual income couples that like live in New Haven, so that one person works in New York, the other in Boston. Absolutely, like it's a thing. So Yimby Princeton from Twitter and now Blue Sky does this at small scale. Like, he is not actually employed at Princeton. He is an academic. He is employed at Rutgers, but he's two-body problem. He's at Rutgers, and I don't remember where his partner is. I imagine somewhere opposite direction, but I don't remember. North of Watford, yeah. Um. Anyway. So anyway, that's my main spiel about group travel. Like, why it is needed. The problem if you're having an intercity peak. If you don't, which again, Germany, I thought it did, but Berlin to Köln doesn't. Yeah, then you just go nuts with it. I don't know to what extent the German solution of just children around for free with parents or with adults. I didn't even check parents. Is in general viable, but again, deep discounts for family travel. You don't need to discount a second parent. Like, I mean, couples. The thing is that if you're discounting a second adult, then you're doing negative yield management because couples have more resources than single people because the rent is pretty much the same. Maybe you need a little bit more space, but only a little bit more. So for example, double income, no kids couples have a lot of disposable income. So you don't want to accidentally subsidize them, and if you're subsidizing the second person in a group, you're just doing bank subsidies. Don't do that. Subsidize children. Maybe if you have group travel discounts and do the discounts for like large groups, 4+ and be 5+. But if you're just doing it, but again, it's usually less important in the case of intercity rail. Regional rail, I can kind of see it because with regional rail, it's often a bunch of friends going out to the beach or a bunch of friends going out to wherever. And then you need to think about group travel that's not family travel. Again, intercity, don't think about it. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to have compatible fares between intercity and regional, then you do need to think about it. I'm guessing you will still want to use the intercity system of just subsidizing children if you do that. Germany, of course, chose to disintegrate intercity from regional fares. So regional fares are just zero because like everyone who ever is going to step on a train has a Deutschland ticket. So. Yeah. No, it's not about gender. It is no, but who the hell knows? Also, north of Watford, are we doing the north versus south thing where it's like the broke or like the expanding brain meme where it's Watford Gap and then Watford the station and then actually anything north of the Thames is northern England, and then if I'm from France I'm calling all of Britain the north. Anyway, seriously, people like you. Like don't say this. But anyway, also I don't think Martha is an Andy. Anyway, I'm gonna cut this, not because you guys are doing a flame war in chat, but because that's my main point about family travel. Do people have questions? Bonus points if these are questions that do not involve flame wars about the London Greenbelt. Do I want to talk about the Greenbelt sometime? Not now, ever, but about like different models of like. Anyway, why is the? Where do we need to constantly refresh? The social what? Anyway, people don't appear to be having questions, and we have not a lot of lag. So thank you all for watching. Find like your favorite text-based social media to have flame wars in, and I'll see you once again in the next one. Ciao ciao.